I'll probably call this one something like odds and ends or something. I, uh, I just stuff I kind of forgot about or hadn't talked about. I wanted to talk about or whatever. I've probably uploaded, oh, there's at least 10 fully polished songs, private files on this site, my personal site, that I wanted to upload, uh, just so they're stored somewhere safely. And then a lot of times I'll aim, uh, they're good enough for Billy's site, my professional site, the Billy Bob Gorilla Cash Jr. site. That name says quality. Yeah. But I don't like to upload too many. I just did a version of a true mosh pit, really super heavy version of Trent Reznor's song Wish. And actually uh, I did all the performances except for the vocal, like a few months, over a period of like 3 or 4 months, and I kept losing track of it. But then I found it. Yes, anyway, I mixed it. The mixing is the thing that, if you heard this stuff unmixed, I mean, for me, it's become like I've been a producer and engineer and musician my whole life, but now I'm beginning, and I always knew this, but man, I'm really learning now that mixing is like playing another instrument. You really have to make it work. You can make a lot of stuff work in the mix, depending on how uh, how can I say that? Having great performances, or really at least adequate performances, is great. You can work on a lot of stuff in mixes and make it sound a lot better than it is. So if you start out with, great performances or just adequate ones, you're doing good. Even crappy performances you can make sound a lot better in the mix, but it's always best to have every track be a clean performance. Um, and something I'm a nut about. But one thing I missed talking about that is something I wanted to touch on is like when I was talking about mixing. This one may be short. I'm going to get to some juicier stuff in a minute, but anyway, I don't, I've come to the point where I'm going to talk about mixing and saying, but I've come to the point where I've learned I have to make music that satisfies me and I think is cool stuff. I've got a playlist of a bunch of stuff, not all of it, but a bunch of them. There's 50 something in my playlist over there, and another 50 over here on this site. But I have some stuff I would actually listen to. I can listen, put it in a very professional playlist and listen to it. But I've learned not to pay all that much attention to what other people have to say. I just wonder if anybody will. I liked it, so we'll see. That latest thing is really heavy, that I uploaded. Um, but as far as mixing, I wanted to say a couple of things. On the low end of your music, and this is an odds and ends vlog, stuff I've missed or wanted to talk about. On the low end, the low frequencies of your music, bass, drum, bass guitar, really everything has harmonics on it that stretch. My voice even has, if you amp it up and compress it, it starts sounding, more bassy, lower. So with bass, there's a couple things to bear in mind. Number one is that it takes, I think it's 10 times the energy acoustically and electronically. It's somewhere around 10 times that the energy to perceive, and it's all about perceived volume, to perceive a bass guitar being equally as loud as a lead guitar. So that means that energy will ripple through your entire mix and eat the entire mix up. You know how when the stereo craps out with bass, you turn the bass, it just eats the whole stereo up like that when you're mixing. So that's number one thing to bear in mind, is that always compress bass guitar and drums and use that to maximize dynamic range. But bear in mind, it has to be a lot louder to be perceived equally as loud as the higher pitched instruments. Like I said, bass guitar has to be many orders of magnitude louder than lead guitar, to be perceived, and it's all about what your ear perceives uh, equally in volume. So that's number one with bass. It eats up mixes, and the way you avoid that is with compression and limiting and EQ all together. While I'm on that subject, uh, all all sounds give off resultant harmonics, higher and lower. So with bass guitar, if you can't really hear the bass, a lot of times you can EQ, bass up around 2K or 8K in the high end, because you receive listener cues from the high end of the instrument, just to sort of give you the aural cue that it's there. Even though you're not really hearing bass, like guitar, you hear, we'll stick with bass, but you hear string sounds here and there. Those give you cues that there's actually bass motion going on. And a mix is all about motion, and dynamic range is where you get your motion a lot. So that's with bass, on bass guitar and bass in your whole mix. Um, it's one of the few instruments that around that boxy sound, around 400 hertz, works really well. The second thing about low end and low tones is that the lower a sound is, the more omnidirectional it is. That's the whole idea of surround sound, which I've got some stuff coming. I'm going to start doing some mixes in surround. Um, but to understand that in a mix, just a two-channel stereo mix all the time, as I'm EQing, when I get to the point where I can add some warm low end without eating up the mix, it tends to sort of spread it out in the mix, because the lower a sound is, the more omnidirectional it is. I've been talking a lot about mixing with a few people. I wanted to cover that. So, and with just a pair of speakers, that's a way that you can spread it out, and make something seem like it envelops the whole room. But you got to be really careful with that. That one went out. But the higher a frequency is, the more directional it is. So you can utilize that to give your mix directionality. Stereo focus, stereo field. But those two things, a lot of bass, it requires much more energy to be perceived equally as loud as higher pitched instruments. So compression and EQ and caution are best there, and be aware of that. If your mix is muddy, especially in mastering, try turning a little bit of the bass, or compressing it down, or limiting it down. But and so that, those things, it's the lower a sound is, the more omnidirectional it is. The lower it is, the more energy it eats up in a mix. So there's a couple of things. There's a lot of stuff I've missed. Yeah, as far as mixing, one thing that really hit me was I was raised. I'll just talk personally now. This one probably, I don't know how long this is. I'll try to make it like 10 or 11 minutes, probably further. This really helps me, the vlogs, keep track of what I'm doing, what my goals are, and what I'm getting done, and keep in touch with people. It's kind of like a freeze-dried phone call, I've said. But also it's therapeutic to just talk. See, I live completely alone, and I talk to somebody like once a month, and that's been that way for the last 5 years. But on that Cessna, on that subject, I was raised, and it took me a long time to understand what this is. I mean, my dad was a manly man and all of that stuff, but I was going to talk a little bit in this one, because I ran into some of this recently about drama and drama addiction, and it's someone who's been in as much rehab and therapy and 12-step groups as I've been in, and studied psychology and all of that. It's something that there's a noticeable lack of now that I live completely alone. And not everybody's addicted to it, and there are some times where things are serious. Although, I grew up in a situation where there, my mom and dad would get into these huge. They're both drama addicts. I didn't realize my dad was until recently, and sort of, but everything was this huge deal. Couldn't believe it, and there would be emotion that you could visibly see hanging in the air for weeks, months, sometimes years. With these, they would always have these huge things going, big, huge, dramatic stuff going on. And one of the great things when you grow up is you realize your parents were kind of nuts, and they might not even have been all that sharp, and they just didn't know what the hell they were doing. And they're the kind of people, I mean, in my case, sometimes you can see them as like that. I met a guy, our guy introduced himself to me here the other day. I'm looking out that he doesn't want to come talk. I was kind of cold, but nice to him. But anyway, um, the point is that as I've gotten older and grown up, I've realized, like, oh, wow, both my mom and dad were addicted to drama. And I mean, when you're a little kid, though, see, that's the thing. Your perception is so screwed. Everything is your parents. So anyway, I grew up in a really, really supercharged with electricity kind of dramatic environment. And a lot of it, I didn't really realize it, but thanks to my dad, an air of violence and an air of violence could explode at any moment. It did sometimes. And my mom is still a huge drama addict, you know. And it's so nice on that tact, like sailing, I'm tacking. Um, it Anyway, it's just so nice, and it's something that a lot of people get sucked into, because to be dramatic, you can't really be dramatic with yourself all that much. You need to suck other people around you, into it, and that's what they do. They want to get everybody up into a dramatic frenzy. And so it's really neat not to have to put up with that. And what reminded me of that, I talked about her in a vlog. For every night for about a week or so, I talked to my very first girlfriend, serious girlfriend, I ever had, and it was pretty cool. And then one night, and I thought, oh, we'll be friends for life, And then one night, I was chatting with her on Facebook, talking to her on the phone, and quietly kind of mixing something, and we were playing around in a playful mood. And on Facebook, I typed something like playfully, and she took offense. She hung up the phone. Okay, this is like 3 weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now. I haven't mentioned it. She hung up the phone because she was watching all of my vlogs, so. But maybe she'll watch this and get an explanation. And anyway, all of a sudden, she hung up on me, which pisses everybody off. It annoyed me, but I'm like, so what? Then I get an email. She wrote an email, because you don't get one that says, I keep hearing the meth heads. And I don't technically know they're meth heads, but they sort of appear that way. But anyway, she hung up the phone. The phone went dead on me, and then she blocked me on Facebook, all within a couple of minutes. And then I got a thing on my YouTube stuff, unsubscribe. Well, she made those up, She wrote those. You don't get something telling you people unsubscribe. And I thought about it for a day or so, and I thought, this isn't high school. I'm way too old for big dramatics. I mean, even if I were dying here, whatever. I'm dying, so what? There's no need to make a big fuss. It's like stuff happens, people die. It's the high tension and the high emotion and the high drama that's every bit as addictive as drugs and alcohol. And it's such a drag to be around a lot, because everybody gets worked up in a big fluff with these people over nothing. And it happens, stuff's blowing, that's what it is, a bag's blowing over there. But it's a real drag. It's so nice to not be around all of that. But anyway, I thought about it with her, and I got a couple of, over the next few days, a few emails from her kind of wanting to come back, and then, like get back in touch with me. And I was like, look, I'm nearly 50 years old. I have been married 5 times. I've seen all the dramatics that I am going to tolerate in my life. And by the way, that's what dating is for. If you find, even if she's a total fox and an incredibly beautiful woman, believe me, I've been married to a couple of supermodels, literally. That's when you're dating, if they're all dramatic, you just bow out. That's what dating is for, to figure out the people you can't tolerate them, Um, but yeah, dramatics is so it's just. It's so nice to be completely free of that, you know. In around 12-step groups and stuff, and in therapy, they say there are no big deals. They say that a lot, you know. And when you kind of come to see life that way, there really aren't any big deals. I mean, you know, there's just I've had a lot of stuff that was supposedly a big deal in my life, you know, meeting and working with rock stars and movie stars and going to the Oscars and running studios and all this stuff. But you know, after you've been in that kind of thing, you learn to go like, this is just another really famous guy that if I'm not careful will end up owing me a ton of money trying to play on his fame. You know, they do that quite a bit, 50-50. You know, the more for the a great friend of mine, a studio owner, when I first started, told me, be careful with the super famous because they're the most likely to stiff you. And I did sit in a country superstar's office all day for over a relatively small amount of money he owed me for like a year. You know, it was worth the money to go there, you know, and sit all day and get a check. But I mean, this guy could, you know, that amount of money, it was nothing to him. But anyway, the point is that there's no really big deals that are so big that you need to get all worked up about, and that drama and people who do it, it's an addiction, and they want to agitate everyone around them, and it makes stuff seem really out of control. Um, and you know, there's just a whole lot of stuff there. With this girl, I wish her well, but you know, I'm not a kid anymore. I mean, I waited a year before I unfriended those two assistants from A&M Records on Facebook and thought, is this sober thinking? Is this fair-minded and right? Is this something I need to do? It turned out yes. But, you know, it's kind of, we live in a technical era where it's like you unfriend somebody and block them on Facebook. But what I would say is, you know, I'm way too old for the dramatics. If she just would have said, you know, if she just would have been clear and said, what you just typed offended me and I'm hurt. But the hanging up and the blocking and then she got a little threatening in one of her emails a few days later, and I said, you know what? I hate to do this, but I'm going to block her on Facebook. And because then she came back. It's a whole thing, you know. And after she hung up on me, I called to stop on it. Anyway, this is like a month ago. But, you know, I don't need the high drama. I was raised that way, and it was so damaging to me. But anyway, drama, bass, and drama. And then I uploaded a really hardcore song. But the neat thing is, you know, it's like I do stuff to satisfy me, and I really have learned not to pay. And this is super important for anybody who does art or anything, really. The same exact videos when I first started, I had like 4 or 5, and in my heart, I got some of them, like 2 of them. I said, "Oh, this is really great. This is amazing work. You know, it's kick-ass." And I only had one old friend in Los Angeles who followed me at that time, and he looked at them both over a period of a few weeks, you know, and he kind of went, meh, whatever. Well, here's how stuff works. I'll kind of tell you about how dangerous it is to sort of take one person's opinion. So he kind of went, meh, whatever. And I was looking like, this is incredible work. I have 2 videos out of like 10 in the first month. And as a professional producer, all I have is my instincts and my judgment. So I was like, this is really good. Not all of them are, like 8 of them weren't all that hot, but 2 of them were really good. And you know, and so anyway, once my site, I took it public, and a lot of people saw them. Hundreds of people have now posted on both of those videos. So this is incredible, amazing, unbelievable, great, fantastic. We love it. Well, the same guy who went meh, whatever at first and was really cold about it came and posted on those same videos a few weeks ago and said the same. It's incredible, unbelievable. Now that everybody else is saying that, you know. So I mean, I knew from the start, like, those are really good. Both of them are very professional and they're entertaining, you know. because not everything is, and that's been my job for years, is to pick out what is professional, and so the other thing the point that brings up is when you're around other people, a lot of times they're selling, and that's the worst thing I hate, me, you know, especially from somebody who everything they've ever done is just me. But a lot of times what they're accidentally selling is fear and self-doubt. And I don't know if I'll be alone and purposefully stay away from people the rest of my life, but it's opened up worlds of like enlightenment about how much of a detriment listening too much at all to other people can be in your life, and how you have to sort of be your own ship and your own rudder and your own anchor and your own sail. But a lot of times other people are selling fear and self-doubt, and the reason they're doing that a lot of times really is they have a lot of it themselves, and they want you to join them in their position. And that's the hardest thing as an artist, is to just to do something and just not have to have anyone else's approval, and just go, oh, this is definitely good. And normally time helps me with that. As a professional producer, I will wait. I don't impulse post things. I'll wait, and if it still seems really cool after a few days or a week, even if I'm sure immediately that it's great or it's really nice, then I will post it. Time helps a lot. But anyway, just some stuff. Big drama. No, with this girl, I haven't had it since she hung up, and all of the drama. I just kind of watched it go on for about a week, and then I just said, you know what? She blocked me on Facebook, so I couldn't see her or contact her anymore. And then she unblocked me. So in other words, she was coming and going on Facebook where I couldn't. And I just thought, you know what? I don't need this. I'm just way too old for drama. I really am. And it's something that I think you outgrow, but it's an addiction. And I was raised with high drama. You could cut the emotion in the air with a knife the way I was raised, and the violence and the silence and the anger and the rage and the frustration. You could, all because these idiots, my parents, who now my dad was just a jackass, and my mom's kind of nuts, so they really didn't know, and they had no training or therapy, or my dad actually had a great engineering education, but anyway, they didn't know about sort of what we know now about how stuff works and how people think. So it's a thing. But during dating is the time to figure out if they're drama queens. And I would say it's just been so detrimental to my life, having big dramatic men and women in my life. Friends, guy friends who are everything's, oh my god, and being married to women. Not all of them, but a lot of them were, and that goes right along with addiction and alcoholism. They're sort of birds of a feather. So anyway, for what it's worth, but this has been an incredible experience for me. The enlightenment, the way things have opened up about how other people negatively affect you in your life, and really it's nobody's fault but my own, or any of our own faults, because little bug flying around, because it's my job to filter out what input I accept as valid. So that's hard, because I thought my parents when I was a kid were valid. They had valid input, and it turns out they were just kind of nuts. And so it's taken me a long, long time in life to learn to sort of disregard dramatic bullshit. But it's a lot more pleasant life that way. So anyway, vlog. I should do the poltergeist ending on this one. People, this vlog is clear.